Sorry to interrupt your lunch. On behalf of Victorian women lawyers, I'd also like to welcome you here today. My name is Patricia Athanasiadis and I'm the convener of VWL. May I start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land upon which we meet, the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. Today represents the continued commitment that VWL and the LIV share towards campaigning against violence against women. And as Caroline mentioned, disappointingly, that show of support is still necessary. So, with that topic in mind, and as I know you're all far more interested in hearing from our speakers than me, by way of introduction, our moderator of today's panel is Judge Felicity Hampel. Prior to Her Honour's appointment to the County Court Bench in 2005, Her Honour was appointed Queen's Counsel, converting to Senior Counsel in 2001. Her Honour has always been a feminist and is committed to equality of opportunity. Our two White Ribbon Day ambassadors, who are no strangers to the media, are Waleed Ali and Sam De Brito. Waleed is a lecturer in politics at Monash University, where he also works within the Global Terrorism Research Centre. His social and political commentary appear regularly in newspapers, and you may have actually seen him on television this morning. Waleed is also the author of People Like Us, How Arrogance is Dividing Islam and the West. Our second panellist is Sam De Brito. Sam is an author and newspaper columnist who pens the popular All Men Are Liars column for the Sun Herald and the Sunday Age, and a thrice-weekly national blog of the same name. He's the author of 5 books, all of which sound very interesting: No Tattoos Before You're 30, Building a Better Bloke, The Lost Boys, No Sex with Your Ex, and his current novel, Hello Darkness. So would you all join me in welcoming our panellists?
Well, I thought that one of the most pervasive areas of violence in the media is advertising. So what I wanted to start with was to show you some advertising clips and see whether you think they've got anything to do with violence against women or whether they're just ads or art. And the next 2 as well, thanks.
Jeez,
These are all advertisements for James Bogue, which makes beer, I understand. So the ads, I think, are supposed to have something to do with selling beer. But what I wanted to ask you first, Sam, was whether you thought this was just sex sells, these 3 clips that I've shown you, or whether it's something else. Does it say something about women plus alcohol equals available? And while you're thinking about that, whether you see any progression between that first clip, where all you see is looking up the girl's skirt and the beer bottle, to the second one where she's there with her legs open, but at least this time her drink's in a glass, and the third one where the man's pulling open or pulling down whatever she is wearing on the upper part of her body.
I guess I can answer from the perspective, yes, they are sexualised images of women. And I can, yes, in a perfect world, we would not have images like that. In a perfect world, all of the women here today would be wearing pants, you know. I don't actually understand why women wear high heels or why they wear dresses, because anatomically we're no different, except for, you know, a couple of
dangly bits.
Yeah, but we can still pee the same way, and we can still get around the world the same way. You don't need to wear high heels, and you don't need to wear lipstick. So, are those images preferable? No. I really don't think that that should be the way we have to sell beer, and I don't think it's the way that women should be portrayed. But are they an intelligent acknowledgement of the world as it exists today? Yeah.
Waleed, what do you think?
Well, you opened by asking about whether it's violence.
Yeah.
It's a really good question because it goes to the heart of how you define violence. And etymologically, violence is related to violation. I mean, it's not just about pain. It's about the violation of some kind of barrier or some kind of sanctity. And here, I mean, I'll just be a social scientist for a bit, if that's okay, because I know in some places it's not. So, but I think it's important to start thinking about these things in terms of violence, because where you narrow your conception of violence to be, somebody punching someone else, what you then do is you actually exclude other forms of violence that have greater impact. There's this idea in the social sciences that's become quite popular of structural violence, which, I mean, it's a very hard thing to grasp and to explain, but a good illustration of it is, the fact that so many people die from poverty every day is a form of structural violence, the idea being that it's different from direct violence because no one pulls the trigger, but and this is a quote from the literature, but the dead are just as dead. So the consequence is, in fact, in the case of poverty, far greater than in the case of ordinary homicide, for instance. But we don't think of it as violence. And when we don't think of it as violence, what happens is it starts to become invisible. There's a thing about language. There's a thing about the way that we choose to categorise things or not categorise them. This is why every military in history, every terrorist group, every practitioner of direct violence recategorises what they do by using euphemistic language, because language is really, that's why we talk about collateral damage rather than civilian deaths.
Those two stills that I showed, the second and third clips, both generated complaints to the Advertising Standards Council. James Boag's response in respect of the first of the ads was that it wasn't showing a woman subjected, but rather a woman empowered by the alcohol. Their response to the second was that when it suggested there was a link between drinking and female sexual amenability, was that this was only meant for the company and wasn't intended for media placement, although an easy Google search enabled someone to find this for me. What do you think that's saying?
Mean? I don't know what that means.
Well, that's what I'm asking. Is that a direct response to concerns raised that this shows a link between alcohol availability and perhaps lack of consent?
What would you expect them to say? Like, yes, these are demeaning, bottom-of-the-barrel, lowest common denominator ads that we intentionally devised to get men horny and make them think that if they get on the drink and drink James Boag's, they can root beautiful women.
That's more the sort of response that Lynx has given to their women rules of rugby ad that some of you may have read about or seen on the Gruen transfer because it got pulled from television quickly.
But I don't see what any responsible CEO or marketing exec, how they could answer that question except by, deception. They're not going to admit their motivators, that they just want to make money, and that one of the quickest and easiest ways of making money is to objectify, sexualise, denigrate, humiliate, violate women, because it feeds into a massive reservoir of misogyny out there in the public.
Mm-hmm. Let me show you a couple more then. Next two, please, Susan. That's an ad for Valentino. And that for Calvin Klein. I think it's for the jeans, but I'm not entirely sure. Just hold that one there if you wouldn't mind. She's dead, that girl. And the ad is for Jimmy Choo shoes. And then the next one. She's also dead, this one. And this is an ad for bespoke men's suits. So my question, Waleed, is, what's this got to do with selling shoes that women can't walk in, because as Sam said before, they've got very high heels, or for suits that men wear? And do you think women who are dead actually look as beautiful and unfrightened as that? And what, again, is that saying about women and death, and men and bondage shoes or men's groovy suits.
I can't talk about how dead women look because I haven't done sufficient field research in that. If you want me to guess, I'd say probably not like that. I'm actually... No, those ads really do surprise me. The first ones don't because the selling point is obvious to me. That's just off-putting. Like when you say, especially when you say that they're dead, the woman in the boot, it wasn't obvious to me that she was dead. That's a little clearer, or if not dead, then in serious trouble.
You can actually see there's blood trickling down from her hair onto the roof of the car.
Yeah, see,
if you look closely.
I don't know. My instinctive reaction to that is not to want to go out and buy a suit. And I don't look at his suit and say, you know, he killed someone, but that's a nice suit. Like, it's not... So I actually don't... That advertising I don't understand. I like... To go to what Sam's saying about the practicalities of it and, you know, this is effective. I don't even see how that's effective.
Well, it's effective in that we're talking about it now, and this is what would have happened when it was released. People would have said, oh my God, look at bespoke suits, they've just crossed the line. And a socially acceptable, guaranteed way to generate controversy is through misogyny, through denigration, violation, decapitation, whatever shine you want to put on there of women. So it's again, is it tasteful? No. Is it decent? No. Is it effective? Yes.
Really?
Well, I've now got for good or bad, I've got the brand bespoke suits in my head, and
yeah, but
I would not buy a bespoke suit. But then again, like if I was in a shop and I saw bespoke suits, where do I know that name from? Is the dead woman going to come back to me, or is it going to be the name?
I think the dead woman will come back to you if
it will now.
No, but if your argument is that this works because it's so outrageous and so controversial that it puts the name in our head, well, that's one point. But that name only exists in my head now in relation to that.
I'm not defending.
No, I'm not saying you are. I'm going to the effectiveness point.
I'm just saying why the groups of highly paid, probably men who devised this advertisement came up with this. Why they did it. Why they chose it. Why it is effective. Because I'm not sure when it was released. Even now, all this time later, we're discussing it.
Do you have sales figures? No, really, because
no, I don't.
I reckon they might be highly paid, but they can make mistakes.
The other thing that might...
Let me move on then. From advertising to music videos, because that's a different demographic that we're talking about appealing
just quickly, just something that's probably not particularly popular perspective, but something that I've noticed in high fashion is that you see a lot of high fashion houses using extremely misogynistic advertising, and it's hard to...
And using the high art sense of using photographers like Helmut Newton who took some of these shots?
Misogyny is not just a heterosexual thing. Misogyny is also a homosexual thing, and a lot of designers are homosexual men. You know, my column this week is about homosexuality and my sympathies for the positions that homosexual men find themselves in. I would like to think that I'm not homophobic by bringing this subject up, but it's just something that constantly butts me in the face, is that a lot of high fashion, the designers are homosexual, and I believe that there is a high degree of misogyny within the homosexual community. And it's something that's not just a heterosexual thing, and yet we tend to focus on the fact that misogyny is somehow the theatre of heterosexual men.
It's probably because we do it pretty well.
We do it pretty well, but
yeah.
so do gay men. And I think it's
probably true, yeah.
It's something that
we might come back to some crime figures about who are the perpetrators of crimes of violence against women later. But I want to move on to music videos because they appeal to a very different demographic to these high-end fashion or supposedly upmarket beers that are the subject of these ads we've seen to date.